My name is Isabella. I'm 32 years old and currently living in Portland, Oregon. Looking at me now, a woman who runs a small but stable interior design company with a husband and a lovely daughter, you might think I come from a warm and loving family. But if you truly understood what I've been through, you'd know that behind this tranquility lies a childhood filled with silent pain and long years of feeling alone. I was born into a family where appearances were everything. My father, Harold, owned a chain of popular furniture stores in town. He was always seen at events with a charming smile, expensive suits, and eloquent words that made everyone believe he was the perfect father. My mother, Eleanor, was different. She always carried designer handbags, spoke in a soft but calculated voice. To her, success wasn't about peace of mind. It was about being admired by others. We weren't traditionally wealthy, but my parents acted as though we were upper class. They invited people of status to their parties, decorated our home lavishly just to impress, and constantly reminded me to behave properly in front of guests. I used to think their strictness came from love. But as I grew older, I realized it was nothing more than cold control, and their love was never shared equally. I had a younger brother named Lucas, 3 years my junior. From an early age, I learned one painful truth. Effort didn't always equal recognition. When I scored a perfect grade on my 8th grade math test, my mother merely said, "Good, you did what you were supposed to." But when Lucas got a B+ in history, the whole family threw a small party with cake and laughter. I stood in the kitchen corner, silently watching them celebrate as if he had just earned a full scholarship to Stanford. I never blamed Lucas. He didn't need to try to be loved. He just had to exist. As for me, despite studying hard, being obedient, and taking part-time jobs at 16 to buy my own books, I never received a single word of praise from my parents. When I told them I'd been accepted into a design program at a university in Seattle, my mother merely nodded. "Well, try your best." But when Lucas was admitted to a local community college, they threw a farewell party, hired a live band, and flooded social media with, "So proud of our beloved son." I learned to stand on my own from a very young age. I expected nothing, hoped for nothing. Over time, I thought the hurt had vanished, or at least that I'd grown numb. But the truth is, that feeling of being abandoned by your own parents never truly fades. It just stays hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to rise up and drown you in bitterness and emptiness. I met Nathan on a cool autumn afternoon while surveying a model apartment for a small project in the west side of the city. He was an electrical engineer hired to install a smart lighting system for the building. We talked about light, colors, and emotions, how space can influence people's moods. What seemed like a fleeting conversation turned out to be the beginning of a new chapter in my life. We fell in love quietly and quickly, like two people who instinctively understood each other through the smallest things. A year later, we married in a simple ceremony at a nearby park, surrounded by close friends and a few colleagues. There was no extravagant dress, no lavish party, only honest vows and warm smiles. When our daughter Lila was born, I learned what real happiness meant. She carried Nathan's gentleness and my curious eyes. Every morning, waking to her giggles made me feel truly alive. No longer the invisible shadow I once was in my parents' house. We didn't live in luxury, but our life was full of love. Nathan worked at a civil construction firm, while I continued to run my small interior design company. We rented an apartment near a park, where we could hear children laughing in the afternoons. Lila grew up healthy and cheerful, always clutching a colorful picture book. At night, she'd sit in my lap, her tiny fingers flipping the pages as I read stories to her. There was one thing I hadn't done yet: secure full health insurance for the family. We had discussed it many times, but the premiums were too high and our income still unstable. Since all three of us were healthy, I kept telling myself, just a little longer after the next project. I had no idea that this hesitation would become a cruel turning point, forcing me to return to a place I never wanted to go, my parents' doorstep, begging in desperation. It began on a late autumn day when cold wind seeped through every window crack. Lila started coughing, softly at first, mostly at night. I thought it was just a cold. She still laughed and asked for Nathan's mac and cheese every evening, but the coughs worsened, keeping her up at night. I took her to a nearby clinic. The doctor diagnosed mild bronchitis, prescribed medicine, and told us to monitor her. I tried to stay calm, but the worry in the doctor's eyes haunted me. 2 weeks later, Lila was visibly more fatigued. One afternoon, while drawing, she suddenly slumped to the floor and whispered, "Mommy, my heart is beating too fast." I held her, feeling her skin cold and her breath faint. Nathan rushed us to the city hospital. I clung to her in the back seat, my hands trembling uncontrollably. After hours of tests under harsh white lights, the doctor returned holding a thick file. "We found an abnormal mass in her left lung," he said. "It's likely benign, but it's pressing against her airway. If we don't operate soon, her condition could worsen rapidly." I froze. When I heard the surgery had to be done within 3 days and would cost $98,000, I nearly collapsed. Our savings, just over $100,000, was everything we had. The bank denied an emergency loan due to low credit. I posted on social media, hoping friends might help, but the deadline was too close, the amount too high. That night, I sat by Lila's hospital bed, holding her fragile hand, listening to her uneven breaths. And then, a thought I had buried deep inside rose again. They're her grandparents. They can't possibly turn their backs on her life, right? I picked up my phone and dialed my mother's number, my heart pounding as if I were that little girl again, hoping, just once, to be heard. I remember every detail of that moment. The metallic coldness in my mother's voice, so stark against the storm raging inside my chest. "Mom, Lila is in the hospital," I choked out. "She needs emergency surgery. It's expensive. We can't afford it. Please, just a portion. I'll pay you back." There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then my mother, Eleanor, sighed. "This is really bad timing, Isabella. Next week is your father's and my 40th anniversary. Everything's been arranged, the guests, the celebration, the band. Postponing would be so inconvenient." I clenched the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "I'm not asking you to cancel anything, just a portion. Lila is your granddaughter. She's in critical condition." Her voice turned firm. "You know very well. We can't risk the family's reputation over a personal matter. I'm sorry, but I can't help you." I didn't respond, not because of the rejection, but because the final sliver of hope had just been crushed. I returned to the hospital empty-handed, holding my daughter close amidst the steady hum of medical machines. That night, I stopped being the daughter who craved affection from her parents. I became a mother who realized if even blood could turn its back on her child, then there was nothing left to lose. The next morning, I made a decision I once swore I'd never make again: to return to the mansion where I had always felt like an outsider. I put on a dark coat, tied my hair back, and held Lila's medical records in hand. It was the engagement party for Lucas, my younger brother, and the daughter of a real estate magnate. The house was decked in gold ribbons, soft music echoed, and champagne glasses sparkled under the chandelier lights. I stepped into the grand foyer among elegantly dressed guests laughing and chatting. No one greeted me. No one asked why I was there. I saw my mother laughing with older guests, a glass in her hand. I walked straight toward her. "Mom," I said urgently. "Just 5 minutes, please. It's about Lila. It's urgent." She looked me over, displeased. "Isabella, I'm entertaining. This isn't the time. Please, just help with a portion. We've sold everything we could." She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "This is not the place to discuss such things. I'm sorry, but the money's already gone. Catering, dress, the band. Where do you expect me to find $100,000? I saw my father nearby, standing with Lucas and a group of sharply dressed men. I approached. "Dad, please help me. I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for Lila, your granddaughter." Lucas smirked and shrugged. "You didn't plan ahead, and now the whole family has to pay for it? I'm getting married soon. Don't be so selfish." I looked him in the eyes, the one always praised, while I faded into silence. "Do you have any conscience left?" He raised his glass. "Everyone has their problems. Lila is your daughter, not mine." I turned back to my parents. If family doesn't stand together in hard times, is it even a family? My father sighed and turned away. I stood there, surrounded by shimmering lights and strangers, realizing I no longer belonged. I walked out of that mansion, once called home, each step heavy. No anger, no hatred, just quiet pain. To them, a lavish party meant more than a child's life. I returned to the hospital with an empty heart and a mind that felt like it had just been pushed into a bottomless pit. Lila was still lying there, lips cracked, skin pale, and breath shallow and uneven. Nathan sat beside her, eyes red from sleepless nights, holding her hand without letting go. When I told him everything, every rejection, every cold stare, he said nothing. He simply held my hand and whispered, "We'll save her. We don't need anyone else." The next morning, we took action. Nathan sold his beloved pickup truck, the one we had driven across 3 states on our honeymoon. I listed our computer, printer, even the living room sofa on classifieds. Someone came to check the furniture and asked, "Are you moving?" I just smiled, too exhausted to explain. Within 3 days, we managed to raise nearly $29,000, not a small amount, but still far from our goal. I began calling every friend I had, college buddies, old coworkers, even past clients. Some didn't answer. Some hesitated. But then came the ones I would never forget. Anna, my college friend, now a music teacher, sent $500 with a message. "It's not much, but it's all I saved this month. Lila will make it through." I cried reading that message. Travis, an employee who had only been at my company for 4 months, walked into my office quietly and placed an envelope on the desk. "I have $320. I was going to buy a new laptop, but I think Lila needs it more." I hugged him tightly, speechless. Then came small donations from neighbors, acquaintances, even people I had only met once. They owed me nothing, yet they reached out. Still, we were nearly $40,000 short. I began considering high-interest loans, desperate measures I knew could ruin us. I couldn't sleep, my heart racing as if warning of an approaching storm. Then, one quiet evening in Lila's hospital room, Nathan's parents, Martin and Clara, came to visit. They lived in a small house on the southern edge of the city, one they'd cherished for nearly 30 years. They weren't wealthy, just honest, hard-working people. I expected nothing more than a comforting hug. But when Martin pulled me aside and placed a firm hand on my shoulder, he said, "Tomorrow morning, you and Nathan come to our house. I have something to discuss." I looked confused. "What is it, Dad?" He didn't answer, just patted my shoulder and looked toward Lila's bed. "Our granddaughter can't wait any longer." The next morning, we arrived. The house felt emptier than usual. The couch was gone, the walls bare. Before I could ask, Clara brought out tea and handed me a stack of documents. I opened them. A property transfer contract? The final line burned into my eyes. Sale price, $136,000. I was speechless. "Why?" I asked, voice trembling. Clara held my hand gently. "You need the money to save Lila. This house is just material. We can rent another place, but Lila has only one life." I broke down, not sobbing, but with silent tears falling on her hands. Hands that had once knitted sweaters for Lila's first winter. Hands that had baked holiday treats each year. They weren't my blood, but they chose to stand by me when no one else did. 3 days later, we had the full amount. The hospital scheduled surgery immediately. 6 hours that felt like 6 years. I sat in the waiting room, clutching the beaded necklace Lila made me. Best mom ever. When the doctor walked out and nodded, the surgery was a success. She will recover. I collapsed into the chair, sobbing not from despair, but overwhelming relief. Hope had returned. After the successful surgery, Lila was moved to the recovery room. I sat by her bed for days, afraid to look away from her face. Her breathing became steadier. Color returned to her cheeks. I held her tiny hand, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a little lighter, even though I knew difficult days still lay ahead. The costs of post-op care, medication, and a long recovery nearly drained us completely. But strangely, I didn't collapse. In fact, something inside me shifted, as if all those years of being overlooked, dismissed, and treated like a shadow had finally ignited the quiet flame in my chest, and now it was roaring. I began waking up at 4:30 a.m. every day. While Nathan took Lila to her physical therapy and follow-up appointments, I mapped out a plan to restructure my company. My small office, once shared with a nail salon, became a war room where I relearned everything: financial management, contract negotiation, digital marketing. During the day, I took clients on site visits. At night, I sketched floor plans, drafted proposals, and sent emails until 1 a.m. I enrolled in a weekend real estate negotiation course and rebuilt my entire project portfolio and company profile. Every dollar I earned wasn't spent on a new car or designer shoes. I thought of Lila, of my in-laws who sold their home to save their granddaughter, of Travis and Anna, who gave without hesitation. I had to succeed, not for revenge, but for gratitude. 6 months in, my company landed a contract to design a premium spa chain in the northern suburbs. Then came a boutique hotel in Bend. Word spread. A year later, I signed $1 million deal to design the interiors for a high-end apartment complex in downtown Portland, the biggest project of my career. Modern Spaces magazine featured me in an article titled Isabella Grant, From Simple Mother to Architect of Urban Serenity. In the interview, the host asked, "What drove you to reach this level?" I looked straight into the camera, unwavering. I once had to beg my parents to help save my daughter. They refused. In that moment, I realized, if I didn't become strong, my child would have no one to lean on. That line went viral. People didn't just admire me, they related to me. They shared their own stories. And then something I never expected happened. I was invited to appear on Voices of Resilience, a national talk show highlighting people who overcame great adversity. I flew to New York and told everything, from being labeled the crack in the family portrait, to the moment I was turned away from the mansion I once called home, to the quiet, unwavering support of strangers who helped save my daughter. The host looked at me, deeply moved. If you could say one thing to those who abandoned you in your darkest hour, what would it be? I smiled, steady and calm. Thank you. Because of them, I no longer live seeking approval. Because of them, I found my real family. Isabella. A journey of revenge after betrayal. Isabella was once a passionate woman who believed in love. She gave her heart entirely to James, a successful and charming businessman. They met at a business conference in New York, and their relationship quickly blossomed into a romantic affair. Isabella believed she had found her ideal partner. However, after 2 years together, Isabella discovered that James had betrayed her with his personal assistant, Emily. This shock plunged Isabella into despair. She felt betrayed and lost faith in love. But instead of wallowing in sorrow, Isabella decided to rise and plan her revenge. She began by completely transforming herself. She left her current job and enrolled in a course on psychology and human behavior. She wanted to understand the psyche of betrayers to plan her revenge effectively. After a year of study and training, Isabella became a psychological consultant. She opened a counseling office in Los Angeles, where she helped individuals hurt in relationships. Her reputation quickly spread, and she became a trusted expert. During her work, Isabella happened to meet James again, who was now facing personal and professional troubles. He came to Isabella's office seeking help, unaware that she was his former lover. Isabella decided to seize this opportunity to execute her revenge plan. She started by listening and counseling James, making him feel comfortable and trusting. Gradually, Isabella evoked old memories, making James recall their past relationship. As James began to realize that the person helping him was Isabella, he felt remorseful and wanted to make amends. Isabella was not quick to forgive. She introduced a series of psychological exercises to help James recognize his mistakes and feel the pain she had endured. Each counseling session was a step in Isabella's intricate revenge plan. Finally, when James fully realized the damage he had caused, Isabella decided to end the counseling process. She told James that she had forgiven him, but could not forget what had happened. Isabella left the office, leaving James with a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. Isabella continued her counseling work, helping many overcome the pain in their relationships. She became a symbol of strength and resilience, proving that even after deep wounds, one can rise and live a meaningful life. After everything I'd been through, the sleepless nights, the sacrifices, the hospital tears, I thought I had left the past behind. I no longer cried when remembering the moment I was turned away from my parents' mansion. I no longer felt bitterness when thinking of their indifference toward Lila's life. I rebuilt my life from zero. I had a thriving company, a home filled with love, and a heart that no longer longed for affection from those who didn't deserve it. But life always finds ways to test our boundaries. One early winter afternoon, as I sat in the design studio of my company, surrounded by blueprints I had once drawn through sleepless nights, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something made me pick up. "Isabella," a trembling voice said. "It's your mother." I froze. 3 years had passed since I walked out of that mansion. 3 years of no calls, no messages. And now, her voice, hoarse, shaky, strangely fragile, was back. "We're in trouble," she said. "The bank is going to seize the house. Your father took a mortgage to keep the store running. We can't pay it back. Could you help? Just $200,000? I laughed softly, not in joy, not in cruelty, just a quiet laugh, like I had always known this call would come. "Do you remember the last time I begged you?" I asked calmly. "Lila was in the hospital. She needed emergency surgery. I begged you, and you said no." Silence. Then a broken sob. "I know. I was wrong. I didn't realize how serious it was." "Not serious?" My voice turned cold. "A child waiting to die, and you didn't think it was serious?" Another pause. Then, "So you won't help?" I took a deep breath. "I will. But on one condition. You and Dad must come to my company and receive the money in person." She agreed immediately, like someone grabbing a lifeline. 2 days later, they arrived. My father looked much older, hair gray, frame thin. My mother wore an old coat, her elegance long gone. They sat across from me, not as the powerful Monroes, but simply two parents who had once turned their backs on their child. I placed a sleek black suitcase on the table. Inside, exactly $200,000, neatly bundled. "Here's the money you wanted," I said, meeting their eyes. "Not because I care for you, but because I don't want anyone to sleep on the street, not even the ones who abandoned me." My mother reached for the suitcase. I stopped her. "Wait." They looked up, startled. "From the moment you walk out of this room," I said clearly, "I will no longer consider you my parents. No calls, no requests. This is the last time." My mother cried. "Isabella, you can't." "I can," I interrupted. "And I must. Because I need to protect my real family. My husband, my daughter, my in-laws, those who sacrificed everything for Lila. And you? What did you do when your granddaughter was dying?" No answer. Only muffled sobs and downcast eyes. I stood and signaled to my assistant. "Please escort our guests out." My father clutched the suitcase as if holding the last shred of pride. They walked past me without a word. When the door closed, I looked down at my hands, not shaking, not cold, just still, as if the most painful chapter of my life had finally ended. That night, when I told Nathan and my in-laws, no one judged me. Nathan held my hand and said, "You did the right thing. You're stronger than anyone I know." I didn't see it as a victory. I wasn't happy. I simply felt peace, because I chose compassion, but with limits. Since the day my parents left my company, carrying the last suitcase I ever gave them, I haven't heard another word. No calls, no messages, no thanks, no blame. And strangely, I didn't feel empty. I felt at peace. I once thought that if the time came to say a final goodbye, I'd be riddled with guilt or sorrow. But when that moment truly arrived, the only thing I felt was relief, as if I had finally laid down a boulder I'd been carrying on my back for decades. I don't hate them anymore, but I don't forgive them either. To me, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let the past dictate my present. And my present now is a warm home, a thriving business, and a life not extravagant, but rich in gratitude. Lila is older now, healthy, bright, and full of life. Every morning she hugs me tight and whispers, "Mom, I dreamed you were a superhero last night." That sentence, so short, yet so powerful, reminds me that every painful decision I made was the right one. Nathan remains my unwavering support, and my in-laws, though not bound to me by blood, are more family than I ever knew. We rebuilt a new family, not perfect, but genuine. I lost one family, the one I once desperately tried to earn love from, but in return, I gained another. the kind built not on obligation, but on choice and heart. I'm sharing this story not to attack anyone, not to seek pity. I'm sharing because I know there are thousands of others like me, people who've been deeply hurt by those closest to them, people who believed that being family meant enduring no matter what. But the truth is, not everyone who shares your blood is your family. And sometimes, walking away isn't selfish. It's self-preservation. If you're standing at the crossroads between duty and pain, I want to tell you this. You are not alone. You have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to protect yourself and those who truly love you, even if it means letting go of ties you once thought unbreakable. Today, I no longer need anyone to validate my worth. I don't need to be called the good daughter or the ideal child. I only need to see my daughter smile, feel the embrace of my husband beside me, and know I made the right choices. Life may not always be fair, but you always have the power to choose who walks beside you to the end.